The Philadelphia 76ers are on the brink of losing in the second round again. The Phoenix Suns reestablished their dominance in their series against the Dallas Mavericks, and John Morant doubtful the rest of the postseason. It's the Wednesday episode of Locked On NBA. Let's go.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Locked On NBA, the daily podcast covering everything you want to know about the association. And on Wednesdays, I'm your co-host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
And I'm John Karalis, at John_Karalis on Twitter, and I'm the host of the Locked On Celtics podcast.
And thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen today and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube if you want to see what we look like as well. We're rocking the beards heavy today, which I absolutely love. So we're recapping the games that you might not have stayed up too late to watch because, frankly, they were kind of awful. We finally got a bad Tuesday night. I know, they gave us like nothing to work with here, John.
No, to be honest, we have had a pretty blessed stretch. We were like, oh yeah, this just greatness after greatness. So a couple of duds in the playoffs. I guess this is kind of like water finding its level for us.
Yeah, this is kind of about right. So let's lead it off here with the Miami Heat all over the Philadelphia 76ers, 120-85. There's actually a surprising bit to talk about in this game. The Philadelphia 76ers just did not look like themselves. And you heard it from Doc Rivers after the game saying they were just slow. They were outworked. There was nothing complimentary, nor should there have been if you watch this game, about the Philadelphia 76ers. And basically the day after it's announced that Joel Embiid doesn't win MVP, he goes out and has a terrible game.
Yeah.
7 for 12 for what did he finish with here? 17
points.
Total points. Just an awful night that was just uncharacteristic of him. And look, I get he's dealing with the face injury. He also got banged in the face too in the end of the first quarter in this one, which looked unbelievably painful, but still really off night for the 76ers, who just couldn't find the energy whatsoever.
Look, the Sixers, nobody had it, right? Tobias Harris has had a great playoffs. He didn't have it. 5 of 14 shooting. Tyrese Maxey, a revelation. I've had multiple conversations with people in these media rooms that I've been in talking about Tyrese Maxey. Wow. I mean, look at all the superlatives you can think of. 2 of 10. He didn't play well. James Harden, who coming off of finally a James Harden game, reverts back to bad James Harden, 5 of 13. So nobody on the Sixers had it. And no, Embiid was 7 of 12, but he only took the 12 shots.
And a lot of those were in late in the game when it was out of hand. I think he only took 4 in the first half of this one and just didn't look to kind of get into the game whatsoever, right?
Yeah, it was just the whole thing was just an odd. Well, okay. I think there's a couple of things. I think
6
the Sixers,
shots, by the way,
didn't have it. Sixers didn't have it. Miami did have it. And I think Miami had a game plan here on how to work through the stuff that had been hurting them. Maxey has been maybe the best player outside of Embiid, and they put Jimmy Butler on Tyrese Maxey, and that really now it changes the dynamic of if Maxey can't get going because Jimmy Butler, a great defender, is on him. Now that changes how other guys are playing off of him, and if you're fighting through screens the way that they were doing and trying to be more physical against Embiid and against Harden, and you're not getting the foul calls or anything like that, then it just makes it harder for Harden to get into his thing. And that makes it harder for Embiid to play off of. And for Embiid, it's just I might be one of the more critical people of Embiid in general, but I'm not gonna kill him on this one. I think between getting the ball smashed into his face,
that looked like it hurt too.
I mean, the dude is playing through a broken face. I mean, for all the criticism that I can heap onto Embiid, he's playing through a broken face, a torn ligament in his thumb that's going to need surgery, whatever else he's dealing with. And I just, when you get something like an orbital bone fracture, you get that ball smashed into your face and you go down in a heap like that. I don't expect him to come in and be like super aggressive after that. There's a little, you're playing in absolute agony, and he played through it. He just couldn't, he didn't have enough to lift his team and give them a spark. So credit to Miami for a defensive game plan that worked. Credit to Miami for, putting up the points, but also, Embiid is trying to work through it, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, you mentioned it's credit to them, right? Like they got out and ran in this one, the 19 for the Philadelphia 76ers in this one, and they got out in transition and were looking to score and get those easy buckets and hunt those easy buckets. And you could see just energy-wise, they were on a different level than the Philadelphia 76ers were in this game. And when one team's playing like that, like I'm kind of with you, right? Like you had Charles Barkley on the halftime show. I'll ask you, so real or fake, you just kind of answered it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't think the MVP conversation and losing that played into anything with Joel Embiid in this one, huh?
So you heard him talk about it, and clearly he was upset. It's obvious.
After the game.
Right. It's obvious that he's upset about it, and he's been upset about it. But again, I'm one person. I know that Embiid will pout when it comes to certain things. I just don't think that's what this was. And
I'm with you.
Maybe there was some of it weighing on his mind, but I put the injuries ahead of that stuff. And he can come out afterwards and say he's pissed off about how certain things went. And I actually agree with the crux of what he was saying about the media shouldn't have the power it has over people and their money and this and that. I 100% agree with that. But no, I think it's very, very fake that Embiid let the MVP award announcement kind of impact him in this particular game, because I think he saw this coming, and I think he kind of knew that this is how things were going to go.
It feels like if it was bothering him, he would have taken more shots than he did, and he would have tried to kind of impose himself more in this game, right? Like this dude would love nothing more than to have gone out and scored like 60 points and been like, "Oh, Jokic is your MVP, huh? Look at what I just did," right? Particularly after the past two games where he basically like willed that team to victory in both of those to even this series up. It just might have been he used up his kind of energy, and there's a bit of a come down from it, and it's just he had a really off game, and no one else was really able to kind of lift this team. They kind of followed his lead in terms of being a little bit too passive, I thought. And look, again, credit to Miami, right? As you mentioned, their game plan was good. Jimmy Butler was going in this one, right? He finished with 23 points on the night. You had a balanced scoring effort from anyone. Strus hit 4 threes. We could go on and on and on. It was just kind of one of those things that's going to lead to a 120-85 score. And that's that, right? And you just move on to the next game, like flush this one, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, look, Philly has to make some adjustments. If Miami is going to keep playing this way, and instead of switching or instead of going to zone, they are going to fight through and keep Bam Adebayo kind of bodying Embiid and daring Embiid. Like, you want to be physical? Let's go. Let's see what you've got. Because he's playing through those injuries. I think it's pretty smart for Eric Spoelstra to be like, I don't think physically Embiid can be as dominating because of all of the things he's got going on. So let's challenge that. So I think Philly has some work to do with that. And they really have to figure out how to get Tyrese Maxey going again, because he has kind of been the linchpin for all of this. You get him going, and I think other stuff, which is weird to say on a team with Embiid and Harden, but it's been Maxey at his best that's been winning a lot of these games, and things have been flowing off of that. So they do need to figure out how to attack that Miami Heat defense. But as far as the effort, and that's like all that other stuff, like the missed shots, and you do have to flush that stuff and move on, because if you linger on that, then you're definitely getting bounced in that next game. You're going home. You just gotta win at home and see if you can figure out a game 7.
Do you trust Doc Rivers to make those adjustments though?
I think the Doc stuff's a little overblown. Yeah, I can trust him to make some of those adjustments. I think he and his staff can figure some of that out. It's just a matter of the players doing it. It just boils down to you can adjust all you want, but is Harden going to do it? Is Embiid capable of doing it? Do you have the horses in George Niang? Do you have Thibault? He's giving you nothing. Can Harris get back on track? Like if you can't get anything from those guys, then you can be the most brilliant basketball mind ever. I think Doc can come up with a game plan, but at this point, I think Philly's just kind of a little broken, and I'm not sure that they can pull this off.
No, and Miami, when they're playing like that, they're tough to beat. So it's going to be fun to see what's going to happen in game 6 here. So we had another blowout in the NBA last night with the Phoenix Suns all over the Dallas Mavericks. We're going to get into that one coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA. Before we do that, though, today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Athletic Greens AG1. This is something I've started using every day. I wanted to be healthier this year, but I don't have time to take a big routine of pills and supplements and like a million different things. I started taking AG1 because it's easy. It's a scoop of their powder in a cup of water once per day, and that's it. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy recovery, focus, aging, basically all of the things. And I do it right after my morning coffee. Next thing I do, throw a scoop of that in there. I like the taste. It's tropical. It's good. It's easy. Like it's a nice part of my routine, and it makes it simple, right? Because AG1 is a small micro habit with big benefits. It's the one thing you can do every single day to take great care of yourself. And they always use the best of the best products based on the latest science with constant product iterations and third-party testing, so you're getting the best supplement possible. And they have over 7,000 five-star reviews. So right now it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NBA network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen. We're free and available 5 days a week, breaking down all of the games and the biggest stories. And now for your next listen, your second listen, go check out the Locked On NBA Big Board. Host Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter, rotated by a cast of smart draft analysts here, giving you an in-depth look into the NBA drafts, mock drafts, player rankings, and of course, big boards. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, John, we got another game that wasn't as exciting as we were hoping for either. I really wanted to see a close one with Devin Booker and Luka Doncic dueling, but nope, it was a 110-80 win for the Phoenix Suns. I saw this coming, I'll be honest. About midway through the second quarter, with Dallas shooting some threes and Phoenix not playing particularly well, it seemed like that the Suns at home were just going to be primed to go on a big run, and then they just blew it wide open in the third, and that's what happened. They became the Suns that we know and looked like the best team in the league.
They held Dallas to 34 second half points. They scored 33 points, Phoenix did, in the third quarter alone. So they could have spotted Dallas all of their points, and they only would have been down one after a quarter. The defense did it to me. The defense was it. Phoenix had been a very good defensive team all year, and they had kind of gotten away a little bit from it. This second half, third quarter especially, they just turned it on and flexed and said, you know what? We're the Suns. We're really damn good. And you just saw turnover after turnover after turnover, 24 points off of 16 Dallas turnovers. And that's the difference in the game right there.
It was amazing to see what they were doing to Dallas in this one, particularly in that third quarter, in that second half, as you said. There were multiple possessions where Dallas didn't get the ball inside the 3-point line. They were just passing it around the perimeter, unable to do anything. Luka looked like a half step slow in this one, just looked like he was kind of laboring at times out there. The Dallas Mavericks had 9 assists in this game total, just three in the second half. That is an insane number, which tells you that just the Suns were all over, and they needed this bounce back game too, right? They had 2 kind of stinkers from them. Chris Paul really struggled in games 3 and 4, I thought, fouling out in game 4 and just not looking like himself after I got to witness it firsthand in the first round, how good he can be, and was still the point guard at the time. And he kind of lost that. And you kind of figured he wasn't going to have 3 terrible games in a row. And when he kind of goes away, takes DeAndre Ayton out of this, their kind of game plan too. And I didn't think Ayton was great in this one, but when you have the defense playing like that, 3 assists in the second half. What is any team supposed to do if that's the case?
That's just brutal. I mean, to have 16 turnovers and 9 assists, that's
it sounds unreal, doesn't it? In a playoff game,
that's a very bad assist to turnover ratio. Yeah, like they did. You're right. The Suns needed to bounce back. I'm very curious to see if Jay Crowder is okay. He had a late shoulder injury that could be impactful for them moving forward. But Chris Paul looked a little bit better. I mean, he had the 10 assists. Booker looked better for sure. Ayton didn't look aggressive for like the first half of the game. He looked a little soft actually, and then he got it going. I don't know. I don't know what's been going on with the Suns. They almost looked a little mortal, and it really, obviously the series was tied at 2, and anything can happen. It's 3-2 now, and obviously Phoenix is in complete control here, but you go back to Dallas. This is like, it feels like this is just a home court series. You go back to Dallas and some of the shots start to fall. They shot 8 of 32 from 3. Like that's a rough, it's just rough. And you just hope that you go back and you can force a game 7 by playing well at home and you can figure something out.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, and so I'm glad you did, right? Like Dallas in this series feels like if they're hitting threes, they can win, and if they're not, they can't. And it kind of comes down to that to a certain degree, I think. They hit 20 in game 3 or 4, I forget which one it was, that, where it's like, oh, they look like an entirely different team when the 3 ball is falling, right? And it's going to be easier to do at home. So I think that's a good point, that it could just simply be a home court series, and maybe it goes to 7, or maybe the Suns kind of figure it out. They did look mortal, as you said, for 2 games. And then in this one, they're like, oh no, we're not. We are as good as advertised. We are the only team to have won 60 plus games in the league this season. And they just turned it on. It almost feels like that, they're the team that's going to need to beat themselves, and it's not necessarily another one that can do it. Though I am going to be kind of intrigued between them and the Warriors, because let's probably face it, that's who it's going to be. And we'll talk about more of that, I guess, next in the next segment with John Morant now being out. But I don't know, like, do they just get bored being out there at times? Do you think it's something like that? Like, I can't imagine that's the case on a Chris Paul and Monty Williams team.
No, I mean, I think sometimes, Chris Paul is still, was 36, 37, like he's
37, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do think that there are times where Chris is still kind of like, he's not, we know Chris Paul, but I think he does have his bad moments. Like there are times where he just doesn't have it. So I think that when he doesn't, then the team kind of struggles. It's almost better to not have him out there than to have him out there struggling.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I don't think, I don't think that's the case. I just think that sometimes we are so used to Phoenix looking amazing. We also have to give Dallas a little bit of credit here. As much as they were blown out in this game, they still were one of the league's top defenses, especially in the second half of the season. So they do play a role. Like this is a very tough series. And I think, early on, you saw like Jalen Brunson backing down Chris Paul. One of the things that Dallas really does a good job of is defending Chris Paul with their offense. It's kind of like a parallel I'm drawing to the Celtics, what they did with Kevin Durant and what they're doing with Giannis Antetokounmpo by putting these other stars in actions and making them expend energy. You don't let them take defensive plays off. and that just wears them down a little bit. And I think that's just a good strategy, and that does take a toll on Chris Paul. I think later, you hope that it wears him out a little bit, but yeah, I think the Suns are struggling a little bit with a good Dallas defense, and you just have better offenses. The teams are playing, the home teams are playing better offensively. Let me hit you with a real or fake. Spencer Dinwiddie is done with this series. Real or fake? Because he's been so good for them leading into this, and in a big part of their post-trade deadline, and he's been so bad in this series. So I'm saying real or fake. He's gonna can Spencer Dinwiddie come to life in this series?
It's a good question because he did nothing in this game, 0 for 3. So I'm not sure. It's a good point that he's been bad for them, and they really need another guy to kind of step up and put some pressure on that defense. And as you were kind of saying, right, anyone else who can help kind of attack Chris Paul and kind of throw him off, get him in foul trouble, something like that is like massive, right? So if you can get him on there, force a switch, something like that. But I don't know. I don't have too much faith in the Mavs right now, though I agree with you. They're going to play kind of better at home, as you said, home court series. I think it's probably fake. I don't think he's got much left in this series in this one, though.
Yeah, man. If he can show up, man, I'm sure Nick Angstead and Locked On Mavs be sitting there wondering the same thing. If Spencer Dinwiddie can just come to life, just figure something out and hit some shot. Like, he's hit some threes, but in general, he's shot like 37% in the first game, 30%, 28.6, 30%, 0 in this one. He's hit some 3-pointers, but other than that, he has contributed very, very little. If Dallas is going to pull this upset, they're going to need Dinwiddie to show up in one of these games. Otherwise, they might force a game 7, but I just don't trust Dallas in a game 7 in Phoenix if Dinwiddie's
in Phoenix, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's just, I don't trust them. They just don't have, they have been playing so well because they've been getting contributions from like everybody. And
Bertans was like a good example of that, right? Going 3 of 4 from deep in this one. Like, although he wasn't good defensively, but he was at least giving them points when they needed it.
That's the thing with Davis Bertans. You get that explosion, and you hope that, like, he finished as a +1, so you won the minutes that Bertans was on the floor. You take it, you move on. But yeah, they need. Look at all of their role players. Maxi Kleber was just non-existent, -22. Bullock, or Bullock, the way they want to pronounce his name now, was non-existent, and he had a knee thing. I don't know what the knee thing is going to be with him. They need their role players. This can't fall into the cliche of road players don't play as well on the road for Dallas. You need that stuff to travel. But Dinwiddie's the number one guy for me. If Dinwiddie can show up and really give them a 17 to 18 point game and make his statement, then I think Dallas has a chance.
Yeah, that's going to be important. We'll see what happens in game 6 and see if those guys show up. One guy who's not showing up is going to be John Morant after the news that he's going to be doubtful for the rest of the postseason. Let's take a look at that coming up here next to today's episode of Locked On NBA. Before we do that, though, today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Built Bar. Summer's coming, and with summer, you're going to need some food on the go, and Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. Throw them in your bags, in your kids' backpacks. Make sure that everyone has a bar so you are refueled for your summer adventures. And the best part about Built Bars, they're healthy and delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food for health. With Built Bar, you can have both, and it's easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. John and I eat these things. I eat one of these things every single day because it really is the best tasting protein bar out there. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. That means with Built Bar, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. Most of them have 130 calories, 4 grams sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar or anything else like that. If you get those sugar cravings, go for a Built Bar instead. They have awesome flavors. I love the double chocolate, the salted caramel. They have the birthday cake flavor that's a special limited time flavor that I'm going to order a box of out right now. It's got sprinkles on it. Who doesn't want to eat a protein bar with sprinkles? So go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your next order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off over at built.com. And thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen today and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts 5 days a week. Leave a 5-star review with a comment. You can now do that on Spotify, by the way, which you couldn't do before. Tell a friend about the show. Stay up to date on everything going on around the association. Yeah, did you know that you can leave the 5-star reviews on Spotify now?
You can do Spotify reviews? Oh, that's
it's
nice.
new.
That's a new thing. Well, we love those 5-star ratings. It's like
help support the show. It's a great thing, right?
Absolutely. I'm gonna go leave ourselves. Give myself a 5-star review because I'm a 5-star man.
We both are, as is every host on Locked On NBA. All right, so big news coming out of the association, the playoffs. John Morant doubtful for the rest of the playoffs with a bone bruise on his knee. This sucks. Right? Can we just lead off with that one? That's just the
segment. This sucks. I mean, come on. What fun is this without John Morant in there? The threat of John Morant coming in and cocking one way back behind his head and dunking on 3 people. Like that's no fun. Memphis is good and they can still be fun, but it's not the same.
No, it's not, right? Like, I know they were good without him. They won like 80% of their games, I think it was, without him. But that's the regular season, and it's very different in the postseason. Other than missing one of the star players, right? A guy who's so much fun to watch with some of the dunks and the moves that he pulls off, and coming up clutch at a couple games, right, in this postseason. Okay, how's this? Real or fake? Does this kind of throw a cloud over this series? Like, if I never hear the phrase "broke the code" again, I would be really happy. Like, does this injury, and like, look, we know the hand and grabbing the leg, like, did that cause it? Did it not? Like, this just kind of changes the way I view this series and think about this series. And I think that like fans are interacting with this series to a certain degree now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the whole broke the code thing. I didn't like it. I didn't like it when Steve Kerr first said it. Like that's not. I don't know. I'm not in the NBA, so I don't know about the whole code to begin with. But I didn't think what Dillon Brooks did broke a code. Like I mean, Jesus.
And then Ja tweeted it out after all this too. Right?
Yeah, well, Ja's petty.
It.
He's petty because he's like he which is great, which is fine. Like the NBA is a petty league. We love pettiness, right? Fun. Like that's like, of course. Did he delete the tweet?
Yeah, he deleted it like soon after. I think if you were to go look, it's not there right now. But
which is good because I'm happy that he didn't do that. That he did that. Because it's silly. I don't think that that was intentional, and I don't think that caused the injury. The bottom line is, look, injuries happen, and in the heat of that moment, to say, "Oh, there's a knee, let me just grab the knee and injure John Morant," is such a silly thing to think that Jordan Poole would actually do that. That's not what happened. It does put a cloud. It is real. There is a cloud over this series because anytime a star player leaves a series, even though it
happens, right? Like it's part of it.
Right. It was 2-1 and they had an opportunity to tie that series up. And they had a lead in the fourth quarter, and you'd think that, hey, if John Morant was there, maybe they could have finished this thing off. But okay, so they didn't. And yeah, him not being there changes the entire dynamic of everything because you mentioned it before. The playoffs are so different because the stretch of John not being there in the regular season, I'm looking at his game log. You're like, oh yeah, they won all of these games, but it's like Sacramento, Toronto early in the season before, OKC, the Lakers, Houston, Portland, Sacramento, like all of in the regular season, you've got this like parade of potential. Like if you get a good stretch in the schedule, you can overcome some things. And they beat some good teams too. I'm not saying, but in a series when all of a sudden it's, oh, great, now we get the game plan. Golden State, not only are the Warriors now at full strength, you've got Draymond, and you can game plan now. It's not like you catch the Warriors in the middle of a run and you're able to beat them, but the Warriors are doing what they do, right? They're getting Clay back. They're not worried about the specific matchups. Now they say, okay, Ja's out. Well, now we can put this guy here, we can put this guy there, we can switch, and we can run all this different stuff that now we know is going to work better because Ja's not there, and it just changes the entire dynamic of this. So I still think the Golden State Warriors were good enough to win this series. What I don't want is the feeling that maybe from Memphis fans or whomever that says, well, it's an illegitimate win because who knows what would have happened if we had Ja. You don't want that. You want everybody to be at full strength and say the winner won and just flat out beat you. So it's a shame, and it does hold something over the series, but also injuries happen, and you
part of it, right?
Play, you just got to play. Whoever's there is there, and Toronto got to raise Toronto Raptors got to raise a banner, and you're not taking the banner down because KD and Klay Thompson got hurt. It's there.
No, exactly, right? Like you can only play who's in front of you. You don't really have a ton of control over that or anything like it. And it's just annoying that this series is more about all of this stuff, the broke the code stuff, the injuries, than like the actual basketball. And like a lot of people are going to kind of put an asterisk on this series, whether that's fair or unfair to the Warriors, and it probably isn't fair to them. And like we've seen in this postseason, right? Like you saw it too in that Dallas and Phoenix game. It felt like a lot of flopping and trying to get calls. And then there were flagrant reviews after a guy kind of laid on the ground for a while that maybe then triggered the review that wouldn't have normally been a review. And you're starting to see a lot of kind of the game get over. I sound like an old dude, right? Like, and I'm annoyed at myself for kind of saying this, but you get what I'm saying. Like some of these series has been like overshadowed by this kind of stuff. And it would be one thing if it was just an injury that happened, right? But because there was someone touching Ja, and now in the broke the code thing, it's like this conversation that I think like actively does detract from the game in the series a little bit.
You want me to make the conversation worse? Let's make it worse.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Gary Payton is out. He's out with the whole broke the code thing. And his whole thing was guarding John Morant. And then John Morant,
the best defensive player there.
Yeah. John Morant said broke the code. And then all of a sudden the basketball god said, well, if you're going to do that to Gary Payton, well, now we're going to take away the guy that he was guarding. And now there you go.
I guess it is. I'm not going to get into like the justice here and I was about to. And I'm like, we don't even get into the evening the scales here, but yeah,
I've actually seen people mentioning that I want this series to be over. I want Golden State to play somebody else.
I'm so ready for Suns Warriors. I'm so ready for Suns Warriors,
which sucks because I was ready for Memphis to make their deep run. And hey, look, on the plus side,
fun. Like game 2, all of those were great.
Yeah. On the plus side, it's not a serious injury. It's a bone bruise. It'll be fine. It takes Ja away, but also, you know what? It's lessons learned, and you move forward with it. And be very interesting to see how Memphis recovers from this and some of the decisions they have to make in the offseason, which is a different podcast. But I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed with the whole broke the code thing. I'm annoyed with Steve Kerr bringing it up. I'm annoyed with all of this stuff, the discourse behind it. I just want to see basketball and, end this series so we can see some more basketball, and let's just move on.
Yeah. And you listeners want to hear about us talking basketball, which you can do every Wednesday here, every day on the Locked On NBA podcast. So that's as good of a spot as any to wrap it up right there.
Wrap it up.
There we go. All right. That's good. But yeah, there we go. That's going to do it for the Wednesday episode of Locked On NBA. Thank you all so much for listening. As always, on Wednesdays, I'm your co-host, Jake Madison, at Nola Jake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
And I'm John Karalis, at John_Karalis on Twitter, and I host Locked On Celtics.
Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day.